Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is lumberjack turned gubernatorial candidate Bernard Peters from Irisburg, Vermont. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Hey, you're the second gubernatorial candidate I've had on here. I've had Scott Milne, but you know he's a businessman. He's kind of like groomed for this in a way. His mother was in legislature, then his grandfather. But you're a woodsman.
Yes, and I've worked on the roads all my life and everything too, and worked in the woods a little bit, you know. And it's difference between us, I guess, and the ones that you would look as a gubernatorial person running for something, you know. Right. I am different.
Right. Yeah. You know, because then the two major party candidates would be Scott Milne and current Governor Peter Shumlin. Who is Bernard Peters?
Well, I'm somebody that I've always been very outspoken, and I've always presented my views, and you know, some people like them, some people don't, and I figure I have good common sense, and I think we've lost a lot of that in Montpelier. I mean, we've made things so complicated and so many rules that it's kind of anti-business now. I mean, we need to get back to you can't spend more than you earn. Right. You got to get the job done. Can't wait years. I mean, we have projects in the state now. We got one here in Newport trying to get a business in, and they've been how many years waiting to get it done. And this is, if I was a business person from another state and I was looking at this, what was happening, I would have no desire to come here and go through that kind of rules and regulations to try to start a business when I could go to another state and within a short period of time be making money.
You know, having served in the State House myself, I can say this is what I have come up with is there's too many people or too many legislators spend too much time trying to solve problems that don't exist. And it kind of tries to take people's mind off of the real problems. And then the other thing is, I have a humorous thing I say is, I think part of the problem, especially with the men, they all have to wear neckties, and I think they tighten their ties and cut off the circulation to their brains. You know, there's a lot of good legislators down there,
yes,
but there are some that their ties are just too tight.
Yep, they lack oxygen.
Yeah,
a lot of oxygen.
and that's it. But do you think people look at you as a real candidate?
I hope so. I mean, I think everybody should have a chance to express their views. What's happened in politics now is money rules. And I do not believe that, you know, I'd like to see campaign reform. I'd like to see everybody only have the same amount of money, spend it the way you want, and when it's gone, it's gone. You don't get none from your brother or your sister or your neighbor. That's it. You just can't get piled on from, I don't like the out-of-state interest, because you know and I know that when somebody from out of state puts money into a campaign, they're not worried about Vermonters' pocketbooks. They're worried about their pocketbooks.
Right. Yeah, 'cause one hand washes another.
That's right. The old payback.
Right. You know, I'd like to think that just an ordinary person can make it to the governor's office. I really would, because I think when we talk about typical politicians, you know, I'm not too impressed with a lot of politicians, and I don't deny that. And I think, but on the other hand, we are the ones who keep electing some of these people.
Well, you know what happens, and I've noticed this, you probably have too. We'll have people say, well, this guy, he's been sticking it to me, and he lies to me, and he takes my money, and he's not a good politician, and God, I hate him, and I don't want him. But then when somebody new runs, everybody goes, well, who's this new fella? Don't know anything about him. I'll vote for the same old guy.
Right.
I mean, that seems to be some of the mentality we have now. And if you got something you don't like, try something new. Yeah. It might be just a lot better than what you just had.
Right.
You know, and the other thing too is, it used to be, and the politicians in Montpelier forget this, they are working for the taxpayer and for the people. And they keep forgetting this. They think they're doing it for themselves. They're not.
Right. And you know another reason you might be an oddity down at the State House, because you actually worked with your hands.
Yes.
Is there was a day when the legislature was made up of people who knew what sweat was about. Now, granted, I'm not going to tell you there are not a lot of people who work at the State House. There
Right.
are.
Yes.
There's a lot of good legislators. But on the other hand, gone are the days of the farmers. You have, I don't even know if, I'm sure you have a couple farmers still left, but gone are the days where you have a lot of businessmen with business smarts, and gone are the days when you had a lot of farmers in it. I can only think like Norm McAllister. He was a long shot candidate over in Franklin County. Even his own party didn't support him. He was a goat farmer, and well, he went from the House and now he's in the Senate. And the guy had, because he knows what it's like to be poor, he knows what it's like to work.
Yes.
He doesn't speak often, but when he speaks, everybody listens.
Yes, it's a lot of people now have they have money behind them. I mean, maybe their parents left them money, maybe they have a trust fund, they have time on their hands, they get elected, and they don't really know what a budget is. They don't really know that at the end of the week when your paycheck is gone, you still got bills to pay, what it's like or which ones you're going to pay, because they can go down and say, well, I need more money out of the bank, and it don't bother them because the money's there. And I'd like to see them work on a budget for just about a month to meet reality. I mean, because most Vermonters have a hard time to make a budget work.
Right. Now, and you're not afraid of hard work. That's obvious. My brother-in-laws are loggers. My grandfather and my great-grandfather worked at the Black River Mill in Irisburg, your hometown.
Yes.
And so it's hard work. What would hard work bring to the table?
Well, I also worked for the Agency of Transportation for 36 years. And some of these people, when they get up in the morning and the roads are plowed and they go to work, they don't realize they weren't woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, or they didn't go 2 days trying to get roads open.
Right.
They're on a schedule. I mean, if you have to get up and do something, go out in the middle of the night, or lay under a truck at 2 o'clock in the morning and fix it, this is hard to explain to somebody until they've actually been there. They get up in the morning and they say, oh, well, I can go to work, it's bad storm, I can go. And a lot of them, well, they get their firewood all cut, split, and delivered, and they have to stack it. They think it's hard work. Go to the bottom of this and cut, split, and then stack it and see what work is. That's the difference.
So here's a photo of you. What are you doing, and do you think you would find the current governor doing that?
Well, in lumberjacking, this is called the optical pole. The idea is they draw a line at the bottom, they draw a line near the top, and there's a piece of wood attached to the round pole. When they say go, you start from the end. Sometimes you have the saw there, sometimes it's on the other end. You grab it, go beyond the line, run up the pole. Once you step across that top line, you start the saw, make one cut. You have to shut the saw off before you step back across the line. You got to make it down across the other line, run back to the end of the pole and touch it and do it in the quickest amount of time. And the idea is to stay on the pole. If you fall off, you're disqualified.
Now, can't we hold, you've been in a few political forums, couldn't we have one that will, because I think everybody wants a forum that is in their arena. So why don't you have a contest here? Have Governor Shumlin and Mr. Milne compete with you.
I don't think they'd accept the offer.
Yeah, but you're also a United States Army veteran.
Yes.
And do you think that also? I don't believe either one of the other men are.
Well, that's another thing too. I think a lot of times our veterans nowadays are not being treated quite as well as they should be. I mean, we've seen it in the government thing, and what bothers me sometimes is we got veterans that have come back, they're handicapped, and they work. We have other people that are on the system that are capable of working, and they're not working. I mean, if a wounded veteran can go to work, there's a lot of other people that probably should be working that could. I mean, that's my point. I mean, he's done his job. He served the country. He's come back, and he's come in the community working. And a lot of people that are on the system should feel just guilty because they're not doing some work.
Yeah, like a friend of mine actually ran for governor a few years ago as an independent, Tony O'Connor, and he's a perfect example of that. Now, he wasn't a veteran, but he lost 3 limbs in a electrical accident when he was a teenager. He's missing both his legs and 1 arm, and instead of sitting back and complaining about it, he took the bull by the horns, and he went to work for immigrations. He has prostheses. And he went on, became a father, grandfather, and as he said, I could have sat back. But on the topic of Tony, one thing is, because I'm friends with Tony, I know some of the problems that you might be facing. Tony was amazed to find out when he ran for an independent for governor, how in many ways he does not exist. Is the media, he had to butt heads with the media more than once to make him even exist. They wouldn't even acknowledge his presence sometimes. Have you ran into that?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've ran into the idea that, well, you're an independent, you're not one of the main parties, so, don't bother us.
Right.
And I think it should be, if everybody done everything to get to where they are, the paperwork, the names that they need to qualify, money should be left out of it completely. Everybody, whether you got $1 million or you don't have any, if you've done what you need to do to be there, you should have your time to speak, you should be asked questions, you should have the right to ask questions to other people. You should all be treated equally a couple of times. Somebody, just because they're the incumbent, should not have a step up on everybody else. That's not right.
Because it really does give them a real step. And I understand the frustration of the media having to deal with so many people. But on the other hand is, by them deciding who the real candidates are, I'm not saying they're picking who's going to win, but they play a huge role in it.
They're pointing people in the direction they want them to go.
Right.
And that's favoritism, I call it. I mean, it is a favoritism. I mean, nobody knows what the candidate is until they have a chance to express themselves. Right. I mean, somebody with no money probably could have some real good ideas and come up with some real problem-solving things if they just had a chance.
Right. And here's one thing a lot of people don't understand about politics as a whole is, like with the governor or the legislators, there's a whole team in back of them. Like, you don't have to have a doctorate's degree to be a governor, because you have you have your business, you have your joint fiscal people, and you have your legal staff that actually helps you in the process. So you can still be an, quote, ordinary person who still puts their pants on 1 leg at a time, because some politicians would have you believe that they're not ordinary. They don't put on 1 leg at a time.
Yes, I mean, they try to put themselves sometimes above the rest of us. And that bothered me when I hear somebody say, I'm working for the party, or I have the party working for me. It goes back to like what I said. I don't think the party is the first thing on the agenda. You're working for the voters and you're working for the taxpayers. It used to be, I can remember it, that's why I'm an independent, is that if a Democrat got elected or a Republican got elected, everybody got together and said, let's do what's best for the people in the state. Nowadays, it's just a arguing match back and forth. They just don't seem to want to get together on anything. I don't know why.
So how have you been received? Because you've been to a few debates.
I have been received very well. I mean, I've been used very well at these debates and everything, and that, like the fellow says, kind of makes you feel good, because it's the first time you're doing something like this. You're not well known, and everybody takes you in, kind of, treat you real nice. I mean, and let you have a chance to speak. That's good.
Right. And I think that the fact of the matter is, whether you win or lose, if you're given a chance, which, as I said, sometimes the media doesn't do,
right,
at least you're getting your voice out there, and you might just say something that clicks in the minds of whoever might win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes all it is that phrase that a lot of people say, wow, that makes sense,
Right.
And I'm hoping to get a lot of people to vote, and I hope they vote for me that haven't voted before, because I hear a lot of people say, well, there's nobody to vote for this year. I don't like any of the candidates. And, well, this one's getting money from outside. I don't like this one. And I'm hoping, as kind of a grassroots person, just doing it from the bottom up, that a lot of people will appreciate that and vote for me. You know.
I suspect you must hold court occasionally down at Bob's Quick Stop, because everybody in Irisburg, what I say is, because I think Bobby is the perfect store owner, and
Yes, he is.
and I often tell him, if only government would listen to what goes on in the back room, because every day, probably every morning, the state's problems are solved in that room. Have you ever taken part in any of those discussions?
Oh, yes, I have. You know, it is. It's amazing what I think of a lot of these politicians, and even maybe Mr. Shumlin would learn a lot from that back room on the morning, because a lot of it just goes back to common sense and what the average. I don't think they listen to the average person anymore. I mean, a lot of times it's, well, we got to have this committee, or we got to have this, we got to have that to solve our problem. A lot of times, a big problem is solved by the average person. I mean, it is.
I think maybe then you ought to make Bobby Secretary of Commerce or something. You know, since he must have absorbed all your guys' wisdom down there over the years.
He must have picked up a lot of it, because he's out there quite often there, and like I said, it's really amazing. I do believe a lot of things could be solved right there.
Oh, I do, and that's probably in almost any store. But you know one thing, I don't know if you've noticed it, I have, come election time, suddenly the politicians and the candidates all of a sudden love the ordinary person. They love the veterans, they love the older people. Then once they're elected, poof, they're gone for about a year and 9 months. Then suddenly the love affair is all over again. Will you disappear?
I don't think so. I don't believe I'm that type of person. Anybody that knows me, I think, will probably say the same thing. I'm basically the same person. You know, if I tell you something, it's probably that's what's going to be. You know, I still don't mind doing things with a handshake. And the old story is, if somebody is not going to honor their word, then they're not a person.
Now you live in the foothills of the wind towers. What is your belief, your global belief on these wind towers?
Well, my personal belief, I don't like them.
Right.
Of course, I think somebody double dipped. They got paid to put them up. They get paid green credits.
Right.
Then they sell the credits to somebody else who is not green. And I think if you were going to have a project like this, that if it was going to take the whole top of that mountain off, which is a disaster in my book, you would have been better off to go with maybe solar panels. At the time they said they were more expensive. Now I don't know, probably it's about the same on price. But now there's towers there. If you'd put solar panels there, they don't go as high as the trees. You wouldn't have seen them except if you flew over with an airplane. You'd have still had a beautiful mountain come fall for fall foliage. And I think that would have looked better and been better, and had better feelings in the communities.
Right, yeah, I agree. Another topic that is near and dear to many Vermonters, other than some people in Chittenden County, is gun rights. Any thoughts on that?
I'm a very pro-gun person. I belong to the NRA, and if we don't have the Second Amendment, we don't have no Constitution. If it hadn't been for people owning guns in the United States way back before the Second World War, we probably would have been speaking German or Japanese. But we put an army together very quickly, a fighting machine that took on some of the biggest enemies of the world, and we beat them because people in the United States knew how to shoot. The only thing they needed to learn how was hand-to-hand combat, and we took on the greatest enemy and beat them. And that's the reason I believe that we have not been invaded as a country by even more powerful countries, is because the average person, we have a bigger army than our regular army. And I think that scares a lot of countries that would think about this. It's hard to, the old story is, it's hard to fight a war on somebody else's ground, and it is.
Right. Now, as governor, you would be expected to represent the entire state, but I think the one thing, is that's obvious is it's hard for rural Vermont to have a voice. I don't mean only the Northeast Kingdom, but rural Vermont, for the most part, is overrun by Chittenden County because of the legalities of the representation. They have so many senators, so many House members. Would you, even though you would be representing the state, would you also make sure that, like Governor Douglas was great about making sure he came up to the Northeast Kingdom. I used to joke to him, he was here so much that he could probably, he could have probably declared residency. What is your belief about the needs of, say, the Northeast Kingdom?
Well, if you're going to be governor, if you're going to lead the state, you gotta represent everybody. I mean, you got to go visit everybody. You got to be seen. And I mean, the little parts like Northeast Kingdom may not sound like much to Chittenden County, but when it comes wintertime, they love us because they come up, they go skiing, they go snow machining, they enjoy the recreation we have, and so they have to kind of look back when it's summertime and say, well, I had so much fun up there in the wintertime. There's people up there, they do have things, and they should be treated the same as we are, even though we're bigger.
Right. In the needs of the people in Chittenden County are vastly different than the needs of people in rural Vermont. It's like, for example, if you lose your license for some reason, it's pretty darn hard to get anywhere. But if you're in Chittenden County and you lose your license, well, you hop on the bus. Just even the transportation is a challenge.
Yeah, it's kind of like two different worlds. I mean, because there's more business, bigger stores, and like you said, the transportation is there, and you got your airport and everything. And here, well, we're more kind of laid back. I mean, we're a long ways from really any big businesses, so travel is kind of a hard thing for people in this area.
Right. Now, just your personal opinion. There's a lot of talk about bringing the Northeast Kingdom forward a bit by all these developments. Do you like the Northeast Kingdom you grew up in and you have now, or do you want it to move a bit forward? Or do you want it to become Disneyland?
Well, I wouldn't want it to become Disneyland, but as a Northeast Kingdom, everything progresses. We're going to have to accept that in order to compete, we're going to have businesses.
Right.
How we put these businesses in and make them blend in is going to be an important part, because I think a lot of people still like Northeast Kingdom. But I know, like in Burlington, they got places down there you don't even see the business. I mean, it's set back and it's got trees around it. And Northeast Kingdom is going to have to come forward, because there's a lot of poverty. We have to try to get rid of the poverty with good jobs. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Right. You worked for the Department of Transportation for 30-something years?
36.
And we often hear, you hear people grumbling, like, where are those plow truck drivers? Where are them? So in other words, you're used to conflict over the years, because I think you're blamed for everything.
Oh, yes.
If you go off the road, those plow truck drivers. So in other words, you're used to feeling the heat.
Yes, because you get it from both ends. You get it from the public, and you get it from the bosses sometimes, And you got to have a kind of a tough skin and kind of take it in stride. Of course, the old joke about, what's orange and sleeps 2 or 3 people. Well, that's a state truck, and you got to get used to the state jokes, and you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Another thing is there's a lot in the news about water quality, even though over the years I think we've done a remarkable job at cleaning up our waters compared to past years. But there's a lot of talk about the waterfront protection. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a hot item for me, because I went to the meeting when they had it down here in Newport, and hardly nobody wanted that law. It was one of the first articles that went in the legislature. It was one of the first articles passed, and it was implemented last July. And my personal feelings on that is that's the biggest land grab by a state or a government since they took land away from the Indians, because, I mean, I asked one of the people from the Agency of Natural Resources, and they were talking about water quality and somebody being pollutant. And my question was, well, when I was growing up, if somebody did something wrong, that's the person that got punished. Now it seems to be that whether it's the state of the government, if somebody does something wrong, no matter what it is, they try to involve as many people as they can, get as much money as they can, and put rules and regulations in. I don't believe the average shoreline owner is going to pollute their property because they probably want to go swimming and they probably want to go fishing. If somebody is doing it, that's the person that you should be looking at, not putting it in like this, because this is a land grab in my idea. I mean, 250 feet back, you're going to have permits and everything. Everything seemed to be going along fine for I don't know how many years. This just all of a sudden cropped up, and I think it ought to be repealed.
Have you ever noticed that when push comes to shove, when it comes to water quality, it's always the farmer's fault?
Yes.
Granted, there are farmers who have poor practices.
Yes.
But most farmers I know, most woodsmen that I know, they love the land. They love the water.
Yes.
But when push comes to shove, it's always the farmers. It isn't anybody else.
Well, one of the things I've noticed over the years, where I grew up, we had some brooks. They come down off the mountains, and if you went fishing in them and you fell in, you wanted to be 7 foot tall, because if you didn't, you're going to be over your head.
Right.
The same brooks now you can walk across very easily because of the hurricanes and over the years, high water, it's washed everything off the mountain and it's filled these brooks full. So when you have a storm now, there's no place for the water in the brook, so where does it run? It runs out on agricultural land. There's the manure, there's the fertilizer, then it runs back into the river. So if you're getting pollution, it may be coming from the farmer's land, but if the water was back in the brook where it should be, it wouldn't be on the farmer's land absorbing all of its nutrients.
That's right. In your position for the road department, you've got to watch the change over 30-something years about just erosion and everything.
Yes. It has changed. It used to be that if there was a problem, we took care of it right off. You know, if a culvert plugged up or you needed to remove material. Nowadays, they waited almost 30 years, and the problem's got so big now, I don't know just what they'd have to do to address it. I have an idea, but whether they would go with it or not, I don't know.
Right. Hey, I'm going to ask you a hot button issue. A lot of people are talking about it. I personally think there's better things to talk about. Marijuana legalization.
Everybody's talking about it. I mean, I really, right now, I don't really have an opinion on it. I mean, I just don't know that much about it and everything. I mean, I've been watching the news about what the other states have done, but right now, I really don't know.
No, that's a fair, that's a fair answer, because here's the other thing is you're going to hear people say you're a flip-flopper. I'm just talking about everybody in general. I actually appreciate flip-floppers. If you form an opinion on it, then state a new fact. I don't consider that flip-flopping. I look at flip-flopping, changing your opinion simply for votes. And
no, the only thing on opinion, I guess I'd change my mind on something or my opinion if somebody could show me.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Show me that their idea was better than mine, or it was more profitable, and it was better for the people. I mean, everybody's got an opinion. Don't mean you can't change it. I mean, as long as you're changing it for the better.
Right.
That's what I don't see a problem with that.
Right. So back to we mentioned wind. We're now closing down Vermont Yankee. We have these wind farms, but what is the law? What if you had to look now? What do you think the future of energy in Vermont is?
Well, I'd like to see the energy that's produced. I have a feeling a lot of energy that's being produced is not staying here.
Right.
I mean, once they put it on the grid, it's up for grabs. I mean, you can't store it like you do sap in a storage tank. I mean, and use it when you need it. It's got to be used immediately. And if we're going to produce clean energy, it should stay in Vermont first. I mean, right now we're closing down Vermont Yankee, but we're buying nuclear power from Seabrook, I believe. And then you hear the same people that are closing down Vermont Yankee saying buy Vermont product, but now we're buying energy from New Hampshire.
If you had to, right now at this moment, if you were considering, if you were just say you were in California, you never lived here, would you move to Vermont with our current trend?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We're losing a lot of businesses.
Right.
And when we lose businesses, our economy stumbles.
Right.
Connected to that is the idea we're spending a lot of money to educate our children. With no business, no economy for them, our investment is leaving the state. So we're trying hard to have very smart children. We're spending a lot of money, but they're not staying here to help the economy because there's no work for them. If there's no work for them, they go somewhere else. If they would work here, our economy would prosper because they'd buy, they'd build, and they'd live here. And being from another state, and with the news media and the way you can see things now, and how long, like I was saying, it takes to get something started, to get something done, and get through the rules and regulations, it'd be pretty hard because I think we need to lighten up on some of our rules and regulations if we want to move ahead.
Right. Yeah, because I'm sure you will agree is we don't want to have, we don't want to pollute our environment.
Right.
But it's like, for example, whether you're for Walmart or against Walmart, I'm personally not a huge Walmart fan, but I know we need a department store in the area. But we beg Walmart to come.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden the state jumps in. We're the ones who asked them to come to Derby.
Yeah.
Then the state, one of these state departments are now saying, well, if you want to come, you've got to fix this road, that road.
Yes.
And wait a minute here, we're the ones who asked them to come.
It's called, I guess you'd call Big Brother.
Right.
That's what I'd call it. I mean, for some reason, Montpelier is starting to believe, like the federal government, people cannot think for themselves. They're trying to tell us every move to make and make our own decisions for us. And I think the people of the area that live in an area, I mean, there might be disagreements,
Right.
but I think they could come to a conclusion quicker than getting state and federal involved, because nobody in Montpelier knows really how Vermont is being run in the Northeast Kingdom.
Right.
I mean, they can make an assumption,
Right.
but they're not here.
Right. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes. What more would you like to tell the viewers about who Bernard Peters is and what you stand for?
Well, I guess I stand for helping the Vermont people. I mean, I don't have money backing me, so I'm not tied to any corporation or anything. I make my own decisions. And right now, as an independent, if I get elected, you can't hear the Democrats say I can't work with him because he's Republican or vice versa, because I'm a neutral person. I can work with anybody. Bring me ideas, and we'll try to get this state going. It's going to be a hard pull because it's gone downhill for a long time. But I think we could turn it around, and I have ideas of how to help pay off the bills. Like when we got the tobacco settlement, we went out and we spent it. We should have put it to one side and kept it for if you have a winter, you need extra salt or sand. You could take out of that fund, not the taxpayers. It's a backup account. And the other thing is, when the state starts a program and they fund it, as soon as that program, they don't fund it no more, we don't have it no more. It shouldn't keep going to the taxpayers. Because if we lived without it before it started, probably we can live without it after it's
Right.
not there no more.
Okay, my last question. If you had to pick a politician that you admire the most, whether it's local, whether it's state, or national, who would it be?
It'd be John Kennedy. He had the gumption to stand up to the Russians in the Cuban Missile Crisis and say, back off or else, and he stuck to his guns. And right now, we don't seem to have many people to do that anymore. You got to stick to your convictions. If it's for the betterment of the people, you got to be ready to stand up and be there for them.
Well, I think we do need more independent voices. I really do. I think our party system is completely broke, and
Yes.
and I do. But in closing, I want to say I envy you. You got more hair on your chin than I have on my head. I sit here, look at that great beard, and I think, and I'm follically impaired.
Well, I've been called Phil from Duck Dynasty a good many a times, and I said, well,
Oh, I never thought of that.
I may look like him, but I don't have his money.
Okay, I want to thank you for coming on and wish you well. And if if you don't win, I'm sure you are bringing something to the table that other people can learn from, because we really do need a strong voice here in the Northeast Kingdom. Fortunately, we are blessed with a handful of really good legislators
Yes.
in this area.
Yes, we do.
Your very own Mike Marcotte. I'm going to tell you, he might not be the loudest guy, but he's one of the most respected legislators in this state. So, okay, well, so just maybe you'll be not the Oval Office, but you'll be down at the State House.
I hope so. I hope everybody realizes that, that if you haven't voted, you ain't registered to vote, or, this is the chance this year to really vote and make a difference. Because, I know there's other candidates running, but I consider myself a strong candidate.
Okay.
If people will vote for me, and I would appreciate votes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. And
Thank you for
good luck.
asking me. Thank you for asking me.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.